The worst pain wasn't from the accident. It was hearing my mother say, "She's not our daughter." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. But I heard every word. The doctor asked for permission to operate. My father replied, "She's not our responsibility." My parents, Richard and Margaret Mitchell, stood by my hospital bed and denied me. They said I was adopted, that the paperwork was never finalized. "She's not really ours," my mother whispered. The doctor hesitated. "Without authorization, we can't proceed." My father didn't flinch. "Then don't treat her." I was awake inside my broken body, listening as the people who raised me left me to die. That was the moment everything changed. Not the crash, not the coma, but the truth. They never saw me as their daughter, and now they wanted me gone for good. The door closed behind them. Their footsteps faded. Silence filled the room where I lay broken but aware. I wanted to scream, to beg, to prove I was still in here. But my body betrayed me. I was trapped conscious inside a coma. "I've never seen anything like it," a nurse whispered. Their own daughter. But one voice didn't fade. Nurse Emily Davis. She spoke to me softly, as if I could answer. She changed my bandages, washed my face, played music I used to love. She told the others I'm not leaving her alone, not after what they did. 3 days later, Samantha arrived, my business partner, my best friend. She authorized my treatment and called a lawyer. While my parents tried to steal my inheritance, Emily and Samantha were saving my life. Not all family is blood. Some of it shows up. Day 5, surgery. I remember the bright lights, the cold air, then nothing. When I woke, Emily's voice broke through the fog. "You did it, Rebecca. The swelling's going down. They'll start bringing you back tomorrow." Coming back hurt more than I imagined. Opening my eyes was blinding. Breathing again felt like drowning. My first word was a whisper. "Where?" "Massachusetts General," she said. "You're safe." But I wasn't safe, not really, because now I remembered. They had left me. Not metaphorically, literally. No signatures, no consent, just silence and a closed door. I pushed through recovery with a rage I didn't speak aloud. Every step forward was a refusal. I will not let them define my end. Samantha visited daily, bringing news and warmth. But it was the letter she handed me one night that changed everything. The envelope felt heavier than it should. Samantha said it came from my grandmother's lawyer. She'd asked him to deliver it if she died before telling me the truth. I waited until the hospital quieted. Then I opened it. Her handwriting was still strong. "My dearest Rebecca," she told me everything, that my birth mother Caroline was her niece, that I was adopted into the family to keep me close. It was meant to be love. But Margaret had gotten pregnant weeks later, and suddenly I became the extra child. Still, the adoption was legal. The documents were enclosed. My original birth certificate, the court filing. Every lie my parents told the hospital was disproven in black and white. My grandmother had known, and she'd tried in her own way to make it right. I wasn't unwanted, I was misplaced, but I still belonged. I read her letter again and again. Each word felt like a thread stitching me back together. I cried for the girl who spent 28 years trying to earn love that was never hers to claim. But that night, I made a decision. 2, actually. First, I would recover, no matter how long it took, no matter how much it hurt. Second, I would make sure they faced the truth, not just for leaving me in that hospital bed, but for all the years they tried to erase who I was. I started therapy, pushed through the pain of walking again. I held my breath during each cast removal. I learned to balance, to sit, to speak clearly. Spite was fuel, but healing was the goal. They had taken so much from me, but they would not take my future. When Dr. Chin cleared me for discharge, I didn't feel ready, not because my body wasn't healing, but because the war wasn't over. Samantha picked me up. Emily hugged me tight at the exit. No flowers from family, no note, just silence. We drove to my grandmother's house, my house now. The porch still creaked like it used to. The rooms smelled like old books and lavender. It felt like stepping into a memory that finally belonged to me. I stared at the front door a long time before entering. Inside was peace, but also purpose. This house had witnessed love, and now it would witness justice. I set up my laptop, cleared a space on the wall, began building a timeline: accident, abandonment, legal claims. Every hour spent here would be part of something bigger. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was preparing. I wrote the letter late at night, the house silent around me. It wasn't rage that guided my hand, it was clarity. 28 years of being invisible needed to be named, not shouted, just stated. I told them everything, the neglect, the lies, the moment they left me to die. I attached proof, hospital footage, legal records, adoption papers, and at the end, I let go. I forgave them, not because they earned it, but because I deserve peace. I release you from any obligation to me, and I release myself from needing anything from you. I sign my name, not as a daughter seeking love, but as a woman finally free. James would deliver the letter. It would wait on the table, quiet, undeniable. They wouldn't be able to look away from it. Not this time. Not this. Saturday came. James placed the letter on the dining table right where they'd see it first. The cameras were rolling, every angle covered. At exactly 2:03 p.m., their car pulled into the driveway. My parents walked up like they still owned the place. Allison trailed behind them, quiet. The key didn't work. My father rattled the knob. Frustration flashed across his face. A locksmith arrived minutes later, let them in. The moment they stepped inside, my heart pounded. I watched from Samantha's apartment. They wandered the house like it was a showroom, commented on the silver, the china, the value of things. Not once did they mention me. Not once did they ask how I was doing. When they found the letter on the table, everything stopped. My mother opened it. Her face drained of color, and for the first time, they couldn't pretend anymore. My mother didn't speak. She just handed the letter to my father. His face twisted with every line he read, shock, then rage. "It's all lies," he snapped. "Manipulations." But his voice cracked in the middle, and he knew it. Allison reached for the letter. He tried to stop her. "I'm family," she said. "I deserve to know." She read slowly. Her hands trembled. When she reached the part about the hospital, she froze. "She says you left her to die," Allison whispered. My mother looked down. My father stared at the wall. There was a pause. Then Allison searched the letter again. "There's a link," she said, pulling out her phone. She clicked it. For the next few minutes, silence. Only the recording played my parents' voices, cold and calm. You could hear it all. "She's not our daughter. We owe her nothing." When the video ended, Allison didn't speak at first. Then quietly she said, "You left her to die." My mother gasped. My father tried to explain. "It's taken out of context," he muttered. "We were overwhelmed." Allison wasn't listening. She pointed at the documents in the envelope. "You adopted her. She's your legal daughter. That's her name on the birth certificate." My father shifted in his chair. It was complicated. Allison didn't flinch. "No, it was cruel." She started piecing things together aloud. Childhood memories, small slights. The way they'd brushed off my wins celebrated hers. "You never thought she belonged," she said slowly. "That's why you left her, because deep down she wasn't real to you." My parents stayed silent. For the first time, Allison saw them clearly, and she didn't like what she saw. 3 days after the cafe, I received a letter from the probate court. My parents had filed to contest the adoption, claiming coercion fraud and emotional duress. They said grandmother Martha had manipulated them, that they never wanted me. I read it once, then placed it on the table. There were no tears this time, just a cold, steady ache in my chest. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to hurt me. Allison called that night. "I'm sorry," she said softly. I told them they were wrong. I begged them to stop. I could hear it in her voice, grief, confusion, shame. "I know it's not your fault," I told her. But it didn't make it easier. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. All I had done was speak the truth, and somehow that made me the villain in their story. I refused to be quiet again. The next morning, Allison showed up at my doorstep with a duffel bag and tired eyes. "I can't stay there," she said. "They pretend nothing happened. I can't breathe." I stood there unsure. Letting her in meant reopening old wounds, but maybe healing required more than distance. It needed new choices. "The east wing's empty," I said. "It has its own bathroom." Her shoulders dropped just a little. Relief. "I won't stay long," she promised. "Just until I figure things out." I nodded. We didn't hug. We didn't talk much. She placed her bag quietly in the guest room and closed the door. That night, the house felt unfamiliar again, like something shifting beneath the surface. Two sisters, once split by silence, now living under one roof. Not out of duty, but something closer to hope. A small, cautious step towards something real. The next morning, Allison showed up at my doorstep with a duffel bag and tired eyes. "I can't stay there," she said. "They pretend nothing happened. I can't breathe." I stood there unsure. Letting her in meant reopening old wounds, but maybe healing required more than distance. It needed new choices. The East Wing's empty, I said. It has its own bathroom. Her shoulders dropped just a little. Relief. I won't stay long, she promised. Just until I figure things out. I nodded. We didn't hug. We didn't talk much. She placed her bag quietly in the guest room and closed the door. That night, the house felt unfamiliar again, like something shifting beneath the surface. Two sisters, once split by silence, now living under one roof. Not out of duty, but something closer to hope. A small, cautious step towards something real. Living together was harder than I expected. Not because of arguments, there weren't any, but because of all the things we didn't know how to say. We moved like guests in each other's memories. Careful, polite, distant. We set ground rules, shared cleaning duties, took turns cooking, though most nights ended with takeout and silence. I caught her once staring at an old photo of us. She quickly turned it face down. In the mornings, she left early for work. At night, I stayed in my room too long before coming out. Neither of us wanted to force what wasn't ready, but something gentle was taking root. She brought me tea on bad pain days. I left sticky notes with reminders for her exams. We weren't sisters again, not yet. But we were learning how to live without hurting each other. Some evenings, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful, like breathing without trying too hard. Allison started staying in the living room longer. She'd scroll through her phone, occasionally glancing over at me. I'd pretend not to notice. One night, she asked if I wanted to watch something. I said yes, surprised by how easy it felt. We ended up mocking a terrible dating show. She laughed with her whole body like she used to, and for a moment I remembered what it felt like to be sisters before everything broke. That night, she brought me a mug of hot cocoa, didn't say anything, just handed it to me and sat down. No fixing, no apologies, just warmth. It wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about making space for something else to grow, something quieter, and maybe more real. A letter from their lawyer arrived the next morning. Thick envelope, formal tone, cold words dressed as concern. They were demanding a mediation, said they wanted to resolve things peacefully, but we both knew what it meant: control. James read through it twice, his jaw clenched. They're still trying to rewrite the story, he muttered. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. I sat with the letter for a long time, then I stood up and shredded it. Every page, every lie. That afternoon, I rewrote my will, left the house to no one in my bloodline, only to those who stood by me when I had nothing. I wasn't angry, not anymore, but I was done letting them circle back in. Some doors don't need slamming, just quiet, firm locks, and the choice to never open them again. 2 weeks later, they showed up unannounced. A black car in the driveway, the same one they used to leave me at the hospital. I watched from the upstairs window. They didn't knock. They just stood there, unsure if they were brave enough to ring the bell. Allison wasn't home. James had warned me this might happen, but I didn't expect the wave of cold calm that settled over me. They stayed for 7 minutes, whispering, gesturing toward the porch, then back to the car. Not once did they look up. Not once did they see me watching, not with anger, not with hope, but with quiet finality. When the engine started and they pulled away, I felt a strange kind of peace. They were still trying to reach something that no longer existed. The daughter who needed them was gone. Later that night, I opened the draft again. The one I had written weeks ago. A letter I never sent. It wasn't for them. It was for the version of me that used to beg for their love. I read each line like I was laying something to rest. I deserved better, it said. Simple, undeniable. Allison passed by my door and paused. You okay? She asked, soft. I nodded. Just letting go of old ghosts. She didn't ask which ones. Maybe she didn't need to. We all carry letters we never send, words meant for people who never really listened. I folded the paper and tucked it inside a book. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. Just to remember the truth of how far I'd come without needing their reply. A week later, James called. They've filed a lawsuit, he said. My parents were claiming emotional distress, arguing that my letter and the footage had damaged them. I didn't even feel angry, just tired. They're trying to silence the truth, James added. But we're ready. The court date was set. I didn't attend. James advised against it. But I read the judge's ruling that night. Truth, he wrote, cannot be considered harmful speech. He dismissed the case with prejudice. Their last attempt to control the story had failed. It made the local news. People began to whisper, former Friends Club members, even distant relatives. Their reputations cracked like glass under pressure. They left Boston in silence. No apology, no goodbye. But this time it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like freedom. When Allison told me they had moved to Florida, I waited for the old ache, the familiar sting of being left behind. But it never came. I felt nothing but clarity. They had left long ago, long before I ever woke up in that hospital. Allison asked me if I was okay. I told her the truth. Yes, I think I really am. With every legal battle closed, I started to focus on something new, a future I could shape on my terms. Samantha and I revisited an old idea, a project born from pain but rooted in purpose. We're calling it Bridge App, I said, explaining it to Emily over dinner. A way for patients with brain trauma to communicate even when they can't speak. Emily smiled. That could change lives, I nodded, because it already had. Starting with mine. The house felt different now, not haunted, not heavy. It felt like mine. I kept the stained glass in the hallway, grandmother's rocking chair on the porch, but the rest I made new. Allison and I found a rhythm, quiet breakfasts, shared playlists, sometimes silence but never avoidance. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. We just didn't let it own us anymore. Sundays became sacred again. Samantha brought fresh bread. Emily shared hospital stories. James arrived with legal updates and wine. You've built something here, he said once. I smiled. Chosen family, I replied. The best kind. It wasn't perfect. There were triggers, slips, long pauses, but we kept showing up. Healing didn't arrive in a single moment. It grew quietly in meals shared and apologies whispered, in trust rebuilt. One choice at a time. I thought it was over. The silence from my parents felt like closure, until James called. They've filed another lawsuit, he said. Emotional distress. They're blaming your letter. The video, I didn't even flinch. It wasn't about justice anymore. It was revenge. They wanted the court to believe my truth had harmed them, not their actions, not their abandonment. We filed a response. Simple, direct. The footage speaks for itself. In court, their lawyer fumbled. The judge read the letter aloud, his voice steady, his face impassive. He ruled within minutes. Case dismissed, he said. Truth is not defamation. I exhaled for the first time in days. James smiled across the aisle. It's done, he said. And this time I believed him. The ruling made headlines, not for drama, but truth. Parents abandon adopted daughter after accident, one read. Their names spread through law circles, charity boards, golf clubs. Everyone they once charmed now turned away. Old friends stopped calling. Donors withdrew support. Their world shrank faster than I expected. Allison told me they packed up quietly, left Boston within weeks, Florida probably. No goodbyes, not even to her. How do you feel? She asked. I paused, not angry, not triumphant, just done. They had already left me long before the court, long before the hospital. They were never really with me to begin with. That truth didn't hurt anymore. It just opened space for something new, for peace. With the lawsuits behind me, I turned towards something I could shape the future. Samantha had kept our company alive through the chaos. Now we were building again, not just for profit, but for purpose. I pitched an idea to her born in a hospital bed, a communication tool for patients who couldn't speak but were still aware. She lit up. We'll call it Bridge App, she said, bridging silence with technology. We reached out to Emily for input. She understood the gaps in care better than anyone. The project gave me focus, gave my pain a direction. I wasn't just healing anymore, I was creating something that could help others survive what I nearly didn't. And for the first time in a long time, I felt useful again, alive in a different way. Allison was waiting when I got home. She'd passed her board exams. We ordered takeout to celebrate Thai food like we used to have before everything broke. That night, we sat on the floor laughing over cheap noodles watching a terrible reality show. She leaned back and sighed. I never knew you were funny. You never knew me at all, I said, not bitter, just honest. We were still learning each other, still peeling away the layers of silence and misunderstanding. There were hard talks about childhood, about how her comfort was built on my absence, but she didn't run. She listened. Sometimes she brought home pastries when I worked too late. Sometimes I proofread her case reports. It was imperfect, but it was real. And that was enough for now. Just when I thought it was over, my parents filed a new lawsuit. They claimed emotional distress said my letter, and the footage had damaged them beyond repair. It was absurd. They had abandoned me in a hospital bed. Now they wanted sympathy. The court saw through it. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice. In his ruling, he wrote, Truth is not defamation. Documentation is not cruelty. What's cruel is leaving your injured daughter behind because she wasn't born yours. The story made local news. Old friends of theirs stopped calling. Even the country club cut ties. They left Boston, quietly moved south without saying goodbye to either daughter. When Allison told me, she asked gently, "Are you okay?" I thought about it, let the silence stretch. "Yes," I said. "I think I finally am." With the court battles behind me, I turned towards something that felt unfamiliar: peace. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was possibility. My company had survived the storm thanks to Samantha. She'd protected it like I once protected us. Now we were building something new, a project inspired by my time in the hospital. A software tool for patients who couldn't speak but were still very much alive inside. I called it Bridge App. It used eye tracking and brain signals to help nonverbal patients communicate. Samantha said, "This could change lives." I nodded. It could have changed mine. It felt good to make meaning out of pain, not to erase it, but to give it purpose. At night, I'd sit in the living room of my grandmother's house, now mine, and feel something I never expected: again, hope. Allison and I were still learning how to be sisters, not the kind shaped by childhood, but by choice, slow, fragile, intentional. We fought sometimes, over small things. Dishes, noise, the ghosts of old roles, but we always came back to the table. Shared meals, late night talks, apologies that felt real. She brought home takeout on my long days. I helped her study for her board exams. We discovered we both hated mornings and loved terrible reality TV. One night, she laughed so hard she cried. "You're actually funny," she said. "You never knew me at all," I replied. No anger, just truth. She looked at me quiet. "I'm trying now." And she was. Trying in ways our parents never had. Trying without expectation, without conditions. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's a shared couch, a familiar silence, and someone choosing to stay. A year after the accident, I hosted dinner in Grandmother Martha's old dining room. The table was full, not with relatives, but with people who had chosen me. Samantha brought her new boyfriend. Emily came with her wife. James Wright carried a bottle of champagne. Allison invited a colleague, a neurosurgeon with kind eyes. We passed dishes, laughed easily. The air was warm, not with obligation, but comfort, acceptance. I looked around the table and felt something I never had with my parents: safe, seen, whole. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, raising my glass. "To family, not defined by blood or law, but by love and by showing up when it matters." To family, they echoed glasses, clinking smiles real. The girl they abandoned had built something beautiful, and they weren't part of it. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the laughter faded, I sat alone on the porch swing, the same one Grandmother Martha and I used to share. The air was soft, fireflies blinking across the yard like quiet memories. Then footsteps. "Room for one more?" Allison asked, hovering near the doorway. I nodded and she sat beside me, our silence easy now. She looked out into the night. "Do you ever wonder where they are? What they're doing?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But it doesn't hurt anymore?" She hesitated. "How did you make it stop hurting?" I thought of the letter, of every word that carved space between us and them. "I stopped expecting them to be something they could never be," I said, "and I started building a life that didn't need their approval to matter." Allison nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting porch light and something quieter, grief maybe. "I'm still working on that part," she whispered. "I keep replaying things in my head. It takes time," I said, "and you don't have to do it alone." We sat there without speaking, listening to the wind sift through the trees. No accusations. No need to fix what couldn't be undone. Sometimes healing doesn't look like breakthroughs. It looks like presence. A sister sitting beside you in a silence that finally feels safe. A car backfired in the distance. I flinched, but only for a second. The fear no longer had a grip, not like before. The accident had broken everything, but in the ruins I had found something else: a stillness, a life that no longer asked permission to be lived. The next morning, I opened the windows wide. Spring air drifted in soft and cool. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt lived in mine. In the kitchen, Allison was already making tea. She looked up and smiled, a small, real smile, one we hadn't shared in years. There were still scars, some visible, some not, but there was also space. Space to breathe, space to rebuild if we chose to. I spent the day organizing old letters, sorting what to keep, what to finally let go. Among them, one from Grandmother Martha. She had written, "Peace isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of truth and the freedom to walk away when needed." I folded it gently, placed it in a drawer with a lock. Not to forget, but to remember on my terms. Later that week, I received an email from Samantha. She was hosting a small dinner, just close friends. She wanted me there. No pressure, just presence. At first, I hesitated. Crowds still made me anxious, even small ones. But something in her message felt safe. I forwarded the invite to Allison. "Want to come with me?" She replied within minutes. "Yes, let's go together." The night of the dinner, I wore blue. Soft, simple, and mine. No borrowed versions of myself, just the one I had reclaimed. When we arrived, laughter spilled from the windows. Familiar voices. Safe people, my people. Samantha hugged me tight, then stepped back to let me breathe. "You made it," she said softly. And I had. Not just to the dinner, but to this place where I could show up without apology. The table was set with care, warm, light, simple plates, and a spot reserved just for me. No questions, no explanations. Emily brought her wife, who smiled kindly. James poured wine, cracking a quiet joke. Allison sat beside me, steady and present. The seat across from me stayed empty. Not literally someone sat there, but in my mind, it belonged to them, the people who should have been proud. The ones who never came. And yet I didn't miss them. Not really. That absence used to feel like grief. Tonight, it felt like peace. Over dinner, we shared stories. Not about pain, about joy, about silly mistakes, small triumphs, inside jokes that made us whole. No one tried to fix me. No one tried to mold me. They just saw me and stayed. After dessert, I stood up, hands trembling slightly. Everyone grew quiet, waiting. I hadn't planned a speech, but the words were already inside me. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, "to family not defined by blood or duty, but by love, by choice, by showing up when it matters." They raised their glasses with soft smiles. No clapping, no fanfare, just the weight of truth shared between people who understood. Allison wiped away a tear. James gave me a proud nod. Emily reached for her wife's hand. We were more than survivors. We were a circle. I sat back down and breathed, not like someone recovering, but someone becoming. Whole, present, safe. In that moment, I knew I didn't just rebuild a life, I redefined it. And for once, I didn't feel alone. Part 35, Porch Light. Later that night, the house was quiet. Dishes were washed, lights dimmed, and laughter still echoed faintly in the walls. I stepped onto the porch with a blanket and tea. The swing creaked under my weight, a familiar sound from childhood summers. Back then, I sat here with Grandmother Martha, dreaming about a life that felt far away. Now I was living it. Not perfect, not pain-free, but mine. Allison appeared in the doorway, hesitating. "Room for one more?" she asked softly. I nodded and shifted the blanket. She sat beside me without a word. The night air was cool, the stars quiet witnesses to our silence. For the first time in years, we were just two sisters under the same sky. No secrets, no expectations, just presence. And that somehow was enough. "Do you still think about them?" Allison's voice broke the quiet between us. I didn't need to ask who she meant. The question had lived in both of us for months. "Sometimes," I said, but not with pain anymore. She looked surprised. "How did you make it stop hurting?" I paused, watching a moth flutter near the porch light. I stopped waiting for them to change, stopped hoping for love that was never real, and I built something better in its place. Allison looked down at her hands. "I'm not there yet. You will be," I said gently. "It takes time and distance." The swing moved slowly back and forth, the night air thick with unspoken truths. We didn't need to fill the silence, we just needed to stay in it together. I used to think healing meant forgetting. Now I know it means remembering without breaking. The letter I left for them wasn't revenge, it was release. Writing it tore me open, reading it gave me back to myself. It said what I had never dared say out loud, that I mattered even if they never saw it. It didn't change them. But it changed everything for me. It cut the last string tying me to hope that hurt, and gave me permission to stop reaching back. Allison leaned her head on my shoulder. "I wish I had written one too." "You still can," I whispered, "even if they never read it." She closed her eyes. A long breath left her chest. Sometimes freedom begins not with a door opening, but with the decision to stop knocking. We never spoke of forgiveness as a goal. It felt too heavy too early. Instead, we focused on truth. and on showing up when it mattered. Emily brought soup when I caught the flu. Samantha fixed the porch light when it flickered. James still called every Sunday, even if we had nothing new to say. Allison began baking again. It was her way of offering peace, warm banana bread, quiet presence. We built something slowly, something fragile but real. Not a replacement for what we lost, something new. I no longer needed a mother to feel safe or a father to feel worthy. I had found my place in people who chose me again and again without conditions. One night over dinner, Samantha looked up and said, "You're not just surviving anymore, you're living." And for the first time in years, I believed her. A year after the accident, I hosted a dinner. Not for closure, but for celebration. The dining room glowed with a soft light. Laughter echoed against the old walls. Samantha brought her partner. Emily came with her wife. James arrived last, holding champagne and an easy smile. Allison sat beside me, steady and quiet. No one mentioned my parents. There was no need. Their absence no longer hurt. It simply was. I raised my glass with a steady hand. To the family we choose, not by blood or obligation, but by love, presence, and truth. They echoed the toast, soft clinks, warm eyes. We were stitched together by choice, not history. And that choice over and over was more powerful than anything I'd lost. That night, I didn't cry. Not out of suppression, but peace. This was the life I built, and it was enough. Part 40. Redefining family. Later that night, I sat on the porch swing. The air was quiet, heavy with the summer warmth. Fireflies flickered in the dark like tiny pulses of memory. Allison stepped outside, hesitant. "Do you ever wonder where they are now?" she asked. I thought for a moment. Sometimes. But it doesn't hurt anymore. She looked at me unsure. "How did you make it stop?" I exhaled slowly. I stopped waiting for them to be different. That truth had freed me to build something real, a life rooted in love, not approval, in presence, not performance. Allison nodded, quiet and reflective. "I'm still learning," she whispered. "It takes time," I told her, "and you don't have to do it alone." To anyone listening, if you've been broken by the ones meant to protect you, know this. You are allowed to start again, and the family you build can be everything. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experience in the comments. Your voice might be the light someone else needs. And if you'd like to walk with me through more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more to come for all of us still learning what it means to heal, to choose, and to belong.